My name is Dorian Vale, 35 years old. The comparison started before I could walk. Derek was born first, 3 years older, 3 years of unchallenged spotlight before I existed, and, according to family folklore, complicated things. He was the easy baby, the golden child, the one whose photographs lived in frames, while mine curled on the fridge with a magnet. By the time I was 10, the family narrative had hardened like varnish. Derek destined for greatness. Me, well, we'd see. He excelled where praise gets loud. Captaincies, scoreboards, rooms that reward volume. I preferred the quiet hum of systems, books, tools, processes that made things work. If Derek was light spilling through a window, I was the frame holding the pane in place. He went off to Duke, lacrosse, fraternity letters, finance degree, New York offers. I went to a state school 2 hours from home for hospitality management, which made Dad wince, like I'd confessed to a harmless crime. "You're going to school to learn about hotels?" he asked, doubtful and trying not to be. It didn't matter. I wasn't infatuated with staying in hotels. I was obsessed with understanding them. I learned the lobby by heart. Front desk until my smile felt like a reflex. Then night audit, where the building whispered and the numbers told the truth. Then breakfast attendant, when short-staffed, taught me everything. Management books airbrush. I took every shift I could because each was a new lens on the same machine. Reservations and revenue, housekeeping rhythms, maintenance logs, vendor deliveries, complaint resolution, how to hold your breath through a crisis so no guest ever sees the panic. Derek came home my sophomore Christmas in a new Audi with Manhattan confidence and the smell of someone who never had to beg a boiler to behave. He laughed to his friends. "My little brother works at a Hampton." They laughed with him. I did work there. I was also building a language he didn't speak. After graduation, I stayed in hospitality and learned to swallow the word just, as in just a manager, just a hotel guy. Assistant manager to senior, Charlotte to a better property in Atlanta. The hours were long, the salary unglamorous, but the growth precise. I saved with ferocity. Studio apartment, old car, a closet that looked like a uniform. The difference between aspiration and delusion is the spreadsheet you refuse to lie to. At 29, I bought my first property, a faltering boutique hotel in Asheville 3 months from foreclosure. I signed the loan with hands that were steady anyway. It took a year of unromantic fixes, training, retraining, firing, rehiring, rethinking everything anyone had called how we do it. The building learned me. I learned the building. 2 years later, I sold it for a 280% profit. No announcement, no family group chat, just forward motion. At 32, I acquired my second property, then a third. Small luxury, stubbornly underperforming, good bones with bad habits. I built a system, identify potential, acquire quiet, fix operations, then fix the feeling, renovate like a whisper, not a shout, build the brand, keep or sell on my terms. By 35, I owned 7 properties across 4 states under Riverside Hospitality Group, 43 employees, revenue lines that could make a skeptic sit down. My family thought I made about $70,000 and lived inside other people's success. I didn't correct them. Underestimation buys silence, and silence buys time. Then Derek announced the wedding. Big, destination, wine country, a whole weekend of curated memory. The venue chosen with fanfare, the Belmont Estate Resort. I had acquired the Belmont 18 months earlier for $8.4 million and poured $3.2 million into its resurrection. It was now 90% booked year-round, rooms averaging $1,150 a night. The wedding coordinator, working with Derek and Courtney, had no idea the man she emailed for signatures and wire confirmations, sometimes signed as owner. I RSVP'd, yes. 3 weeks before the event, Mom called about the hotel situation. Her tone had the soft armor of someone who has rehearsed a kindness. "Honey, the rooms are very expensive for the wedding weekend," she said, pausing to let me agree. $2,000 a night, plus fees and minimums. It'll be close to $9,000 total, We found a nice budget motel 8 miles away, $110 a night. Much more appropriate. For what? I asked. For your budget, she said gently, as if this were mercy. Be realistic. I sat at my headquarters in a renovated mill with a wall of screens showing occupancy percentages pulsing like heartbeats. Sure, Mom, I said. The Countryside Inn is fine. 2 weeks before the wedding, Derek called, each syllable padded by the concern of someone certain he knows your limits. The Belmont is really upscale, he said. The dress code for dinner is business casual minimum, the spa book's out weeks ahead, and everything is expensive. I don't want you to feel out of place. Maybe stick to the motel restaurant for meals? The Belmont's dining is like $80 per entree. Noted, I said. He added, magnanimous, and hey, if some pre-events are too pricey, no one will judge you for skipping. I thanked him and hung up. Compassion can be another way of telling you where they think you belong. I texted my general manager at the Belmont, Thomas. I'll be attending the Morrison Bennett wedding. Maintain confidentiality regarding ownership. I'll check in at the Countryside Inn under my name. Monitor the wedding party for issues. He replied immediately. Understood, Mr. Vale. Reserve your owner's suite off the books in case? Yes, I'd decide later. The weekend arrived. I drove a 3-year-old Lexus, nice enough to pass unnoticed. The Belmont appeared first, white and disciplined, under the afternoon sun, the long drive guarded by trees that had cost more to relocate than my first apartment. Every proportion was a decision I remembered making. I kept driving to the Countryside Inn, flickering neon, weeds cracking asphalt, a room spritzed with the ghost of cigarettes. I hung my suit in a closet I didn't trust and opened my laptop on a desk that tilted slightly left. 17 emails, 2 acquisition pitches, a magazine interview request. I answered them all from the motel chair that made a small sound when I breathed. The welcome dinner began at 6:45 p.m. I parked among German badges and swept into the reception hall like any other guest. Chandeliers I'd insisted we restore threw patient light across parquet. We'd refinished until it could hold a reflection without complaint. Fresh flowers everywhere, the kind of beauty that disappears in 2 days and is worth every dollar. Derek and Courtney were radiant in the way people are when they suspect the universe is taking notes. My suit was clean and unremarkable. I prefer unremarkable. It's the color of access. Isn't this place incredible? Derek said, leading me to the bar. Worth every penny. Our suite has a fireplace, soaking tub, balcony, $2,000 a night, but totally worth it. He asked, sweetly grave, how the Countryside Inn was. It's fine, I said. Courtney's father shook my hand with the open friendliness of a man whose time is expensive. Hotels. Fascinating, he said. Derek says you work the front desk. I'm in management, I said, not explaining further. He nodded like I'd just proven a point he'd suspected. Useful, not threatening. Dinner was exquisite. 5 courses I'd once sampled in a chef's coat while arguing about the proper temperature for plates that carry scallops. At table 14, near the back, I sat between someone's girlfriend and someone's cousin who watched a different evening inside their phones. The important people were at table 1. That's how it works here, and in every ballroom with a budget. On the terrace afterward, I traced sightlines I'd planned, so couples could take photographs that looked effortless. Mom found me, glowing with champagne and pride in something that had not been asked of me. Isn't this place amazing, she said. Can you imagine staying somewhere like this regularly? Derek and Courtney are so blessed. It's very nice, I said. Maybe someday you'll be able to afford a place like this, she added, kind enough to believe she was kind. If you work hard, maybe become a general manager. I smiled as if we were both right and checked my phone. A message from Thomas. The Morrison party has launched 3 complaints today. Guest services documented per protocol. What kind? I texted. He replied, room temperature, minibar pricing, spa availability, tone increasingly aggressive. They've requested special treatment citing wedding package cost. Document everything, I wrote. Maintain professional standards. No exceptions. The band slipped into a song designed to convince a room that happiness can be choreographed. Laughter rose like steam. I stood at the balustrade, the gardens arranged below like proof that good decisions can be beautiful. I could feel, under the polished floor and the music and the tuxedos, the quiet machinery I had built. Policies tuned to fairness, teams trained to hold a line politely, a property that could withstand weather, literal and human. Someone bumped my shoulder, offered a giddy apology, and spun back to the dance floor. I watched the ballroom breathing in the rhythm of its own perfection and knew the night contained an equation no one else had solved yet. People think wealth reveals itself. Mostly it waits. Mostly it listens. Mostly it lets people tell on themselves. I finished my bourbon, replied understood to a final text from Thomas, and left at 10. The motel room smelled like the color tan. I reviewed a Savannah acquisition until the numbers made a pleasing kind of sense. Outside, a semi rumbled past like weather. Inside, my phone vibrated again. Another message from Thomas. Ownership request pending if complaints escalate tomorrow. I typed back what I always type when storms pretend to be surprises. Standards hold. Then I turned off the lamp that hummed. The dark, for once, felt like a choice. Morning came thin and blue over the motel curtains, a rectangle of light that made the room's scuffed dresser look almost intentional. I ironed my shirt on a towel, the steam rising in little ghosts, and thought about how ceremony is choreography and operations are the stagehands. No one applauds. By 1:45 p.m., I parked in the overflow lot at the Belmont and walked the path I'd once paced with a clipboard. The south lawn was immaculate. White chairs in exacting rows, a string quartet sawing grace into the air, an archway draped in roses that had cost more than my first semester of college. Guests gathered in clusters like well-dressed weather. I took a seat in the back row, anonymous by design. The procession unspooled with mathematical timing. Courtney floated. Derek cried at the line where vows turn the future into contracts. People love to pretend vows are poetry. In hospitality, I know what makes a promise hold is enforcement. Cocktail hour spread across the terrace like a painting that refilled itself, circulating trays, raw bar glittering on ice, a jazz trio that understood conversation is the point and music is the frame. I stood near the fountain, where my landscape architect had placed low lights to make water look like a decision. Uncle Mark appeared with a bourbon he'd earned by talking loudly at a bar. Hell of a wedding, he said, which is how men say expensive. He praised Derek's career by reciting numbers the way some people say grace. He patted my shoulder and suggested maybe Derek could help me move up. I nodded as if ladders are something you borrow instead of build. My phone buzzed. Thomas. Additional complaints from Morrison Party, demanding late checkout without fees, upset about parking distance, requesting comped spa services, tone increasingly insistent. I texted back, maintain protocol, document all interactions, no exceptions. There's a line people cross when cost feels like entitlement. It doesn't look like rage. It looks like the certainty their story is the only story. The reception hall was a soft thunder of crystal and conversation. I noted the details only people like me ever notice. The temperature 2 degrees cooler than comfort because 200 bodies are an engine. The floor reinforced beneath the dance area. The passages staff used to move invisible through time. I sat at table 19, which might as well have been a balcony seat at my own play. The fillet was perfect. The Chilean sea bass, a line between silk and muscle, the vegetarian Wellington, a small miracle in pastry. The front tables sparkled with proximity. Best man, maid of honor, finance colleagues, family with rehearsal lines. Derek's toast unfolded like a resume set to music. He thanked the venue, not the people who made it breathe. That's normal. No one thanks the lungs for air. Movement at table 1, a heat shimmer of agitation. A server's smile tightened, the kind of expression we train to hold until we're safely backstage. Mom leaned forward. Richard, Courtney's father, gestured with the authority of someone used to immediate solutions. The server excused herself and disappeared into the service corridor like a note slipped under a door. 5 minutes later, Thomas stepped into the ballroom with 2 security staff. He took in the room the way a pilot reads sky. Calm, fast, unflustered. He approached table 1. I couldn't hear the words, but I knew the grammar: demand, policy, escalation. Then Thomas turned and pointed across the ballroom, toward table 19, toward me. 200 heads turned as the general manager and security crossed parquet. that remembered 100 parties and none like this. The band faded mid-phrase, conversation collapsing into the quiet that happens right before an alarm and right after a prayer. Thomas stopped at my table. "Mr. Vale," he said, professional as marble. "My apologies for the interruption." "What seems to be the issue, Thomas?" I asked, already standing. "The Morrison party requests an immediate meeting with ownership regarding multiple service complaints and special accommodations," he said. He glanced at his tablet. "Specifically, room temperature, minibar pricing, spa availability, parking proximity, resort fees, and a request for late checkout without fees at 94% occupancy." Derek arrived in a rush, cheeks flushed, jaw set for performance. "Why is the manager talking to you?" he demanded, confused in the way of people finding a door where they expected a mirror. "Mr. Morrison has questions about policies," Thomas said evenly. "No," Derek said. "I want the owner. I spent $127,000 on this wedding, and your staff has been inflexible about simple requests. I want the owner now." "You are," Thomas said, speaking with the owner. Silence poured over the ballroom with the efficiency of a trained team. You could hear the ice settle in glasses. "That's not funny," Derek said, half laughing, half panicked. "It isn't a joke," I said quietly. "I acquired the Belmont 18 months ago. Thomas is my general manager." Mom pushed in, pearls trembling as if they had their own heartbeat. "Dorian," she said, "what is happening?" "I own this hotel," I said. "This one and 6 others." Courtney clutched her bouquet, like it could decide which way reality would tilt. Richard stared at the ceiling like someone had hidden the answer there. "This property is worth," he started, then stopped, as if naming a number would summon a different ending. $14.7 million, current valuation, I supplied. Purchased at 8.4, renovated at 3.2. A murmur lifted and died. There's a sound people make when the story they believed about you evaporates. It's not surprise. It's a recalibration so fast they forget to breathe. Derek's voice returned smaller. "You own this place?" "Yes," I said. "And right now, we're going to address your complaints professionally." Thomas held the tablet steady. Requested accommodations, refunds on incidental charges and complimentary upgrades. Late checkout without fees across the family's room block. "Incidental charges are clearly disclosed in the contract," I said. "Minibar, premium Wi-Fi, spa services, parking, each with stated prices and terms. As for late checkout, standard checkout is 11. At 94% occupancy, late checkout delays, turnover, and affects incoming guests. Fees apply, no exceptions." Derek spread his hands. "We spent $127,000. On a comprehensive wedding package," I said. "Ceremony space, reception venue, catering, bar service, accommodations for the wedding party, coordination. All delivered exactly as contracted. Incidental charges are separate. That's standard industry practice." Courtney's mascara puddled. Grief for a narrative rather than for a cost. "You're going to charge your own brother?" "I'm going to uphold the same standards for every guest," I said. "That's how you run a property with integrity. Family isn't an exemption category." Richard steadied himself against the back of a chair. "You let us believe—" "I let you assume," I said. "You asked if I worked in hotels. I do. Ownership is a kind of work." Mom's eyes searched my face as if years might jump up and explain themselves. "But the motel," she whispered, like that choice betrayed her more than it protected me. "You suggested it was appropriate for my budget," I said. "I didn't correct you because it was easier than performing wealth for a room that preferred me small." Derek swallowed. His certainty had cracked and something human was spilling out. "All this time," he said, "and we had no idea." "Because you were uninterested," I said, not unkindly. "I tried to talk about my work. You changed the subject to your successes. I adjusted accordingly." The room had become a theater of faces, some admiring, some delighted by scandal, some shocked into the silence where self-reflection lives. It wasn't revenge, it was inventory. People were discovering what they valued when value wasn't behaving. Thomas, to his credit, didn't rush the moment. "Mr. Vale," he said, "for the record, do you approve the requested accommodations?" "No," I said, clear and calm. "All charges stand as contracted. Standard checkout applies. No exceptions." Mom flinched like the word hurt. "But we're family." "Exactly," I said. And for 9 years, our family was comfortable with a fiction in which I was small enough to fit inside Derek's shadow. That fiction ends here, not because of money, but because standards are how I built this and how I keep it. If we build anything new together, it has to stand on reality. There are moments in a ballroom when even the chandeliers seem to listen. The band held its breath. 200 guests felt the floor of their own stories shift by a fraction. I watched Derek, his shoulders lowered, his mouth softened, his eyes losing the performance and finding the cost. The GM nodded once, an acknowledgement of line held. "Thank you, Thomas," I said at last. "Proceed as planned. And please ensure Mr. Morrison's final bill is itemized completely. Every charge clearly documented." "Of course, sir," he said, and withdrew with security, moving like water back into the channels that keep a place alive. The crowd slowly broke apart into whispers that tried to explain what had just happened. At table 19, I stood a little taller, not because they finally knew me, but because I finally refused the gravity of being known wrongly. In the stillness that followed, the truth felt less like a weapon and more like a well-built room, proportioned, ventilated, lit for its purpose. The music resumed, softer, as though the building itself understood the lesson. No exceptions. The words rang once, precise as a bell, and then dissolved into the hum of a property doing exactly what it was designed to do. The ballroom exhaled like a body remembering how to breathe. Conversations returned in cautious murmurs, forks scraped plates again, and the band stumbled back into a safe melody that could fill the silence without claiming it. I remained standing for a moment longer, aware of every eye that pretended not to look. Then I sat, slowly, deliberately. The reception staggered forward, functioning, but off balance, like a dancer who had lost the beat. Thomas's composure had reabsorbed the tension. The servers moved again. The kitchen resumed its rhythm. Yet the pulse of the night had changed. Every smile now came with a glance in my direction. Every whisper carried my name like a new currency. Mom approached first. Her pearls no longer gleamed. They hung heavy, dulled by the kind of realization that doesn't fit into apology. "Dorian," she said softly, as if the syllables themselves might shatter. "Can we talk privately?" "There's nothing private left," I said. "You know now what I do, what I've built. That's all you ever really wanted to know, isn't it?" She blinked, confusion and hurt wrestling behind her mascara. "We love you," she said. "You love the version of me that made Derek's light look brighter," I replied. "That version was easier to love." Dad stood behind her, silent, hands in pockets. I caught his reflection in the window. Small, tired, maybe ashamed. "We didn't know," he said finally. "You didn't care to know," I answered. "That's the difference." Across the room, Derek still sat at table 1, his glass untouched, his new wife whispering frantic damage control. The father-in-law had already retreated, checking his watch as though business might rescue him from embarrassment. I could almost see the calculations running behind his eyes: reputation management, public perception, potential salvage. The wedding planner hovered by the doorway, unsure whether to restart the schedule or call it a night. I nodded once to Thomas. He gave the subtlest signal, and the dessert course began to roll out. Chocolate soufflés, brulee, petit four. The scent of sugar tried to reassert normalcy. It didn't quite succeed. I checked my phone. 17 unread messages from employees congratulating me in coded phrases. Legendary, that was something. Proud to work here. I typed one reply to all. Standards hold. Thank you for your professionalism. When I looked up again, Derek was on his feet. He crossed the floor slowly, as if wading through the thick air between who he'd been and who he might still become. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, stopping beside me, "for all of it, for never seeing you, for assuming everything." Apologies are easy when hierarchy collapses, but his didn't feel rehearsed. He looked older, smaller. "Thank you," I said. "Can we fix this?" he asked. "Maybe," I said, "but not tonight, and not because of what you learned about me. If we rebuild anything, it has to be because we want to know each other, not because you're impressed." He nodded, eyes wet but steady. "I want to know you," he said. "Really know you." "Then call me next week," I said. "Ask about my work. Listen this time." He smiled, faint, uncertain, but real. "I will." I believed him enough to leave the door cracked. The night wound down. Guests trickled out. The ballroom emptied, except for staff resetting the room. I stayed until the last champagne flute was cleared, watching my team work with the quiet precision I respected most. No dramatics, no gossip, just efficiency, pride, calm order. When I finally stepped outside, the Virginia air had cooled into something forgiving. Crickets filled the gaps the music had left. I took one long look at the mansion, glowing against the dark, every window a memory I had built. Thomas met me by the portico. "Mr. Vale," he said, his usual reserve softened by admiration. "Housekeeping can prepare your suite if you'd prefer to stay tonight." "Yes," I said after a pause. "Let's do that." He nodded, relief flickering like respect. "We've stocked the good Scotch," he added quietly. "Thank you, Thomas." He hesitated. "If I may, sir, what you did tonight, the staff will be talking about it for years." "Let them," I said. "But make sure they also talk about how we maintain professionalism through it." "Of course." I drove back to the Countryside Inn one last time. The neon flickered the same, but it no longer looked like humility. It looked like a chapter I could finally close. I packed my bag, checked out at midnight, and drove back to the Belmont. The night manager greeted me with a bow of recognition. "Welcome home, Mr. Vale. Your suite is ready." Home. The word fit differently here. The elevator hummed upward, smooth and private. When the doors opened, my suite greeted me, like memory and reward combined. Wide terrace, stone fireplace, panoramic windows, revealing the grounds below. I poured 2 fingers of the 30-year Scotch and stepped outside. Down in the distance, the last of the wedding guests laughed under strings of lights, unaware that the man watching from above was the one who'd built the world they were celebrating in. My phone buzzed again, texts flooding in. From Mom. "Please don't hate us. We didn't mean to make you feel small." From Dad. "We're proud of you, son. We should have said it years ago." From Uncle Mark. "I'm an idiot. Forgive me." And from Derek. "I mean it. I want to start over." I read them all. Didn't reply yet. Some truths need quiet before answers. Inside, I placed the glass on the marble counter and took one slow breath. The suite was perfect. Every line, every fabric, every finish. I had approved each detail. It was the proof of a life built carefully, not loudly. For years, I had been the invisible brother, the afterthought, the footnote. Now I wasn't angry anymore. I was free. Freedom didn't look like revenge. It looked like stillness, like knowing I had built something that no longer required anyone's permission to exist. I stood at the window until the lights in the ballroom dimmed, until the only glow left came from the landscape I had designed. Somewhere below, staff locked doors, polished glass, and reset the world for the morning. They didn't know their owner was watching. That was the beauty of it. They didn't have to. Because a well-run place, like a well-lived life, should keep running, even when no one is looking. Morning unfolded in quiet precision, the kind of calm only a property that runs on discipline can hold. The sun filtered through the terrace windows, scattering across marble floors I'd once chosen from a sample catalog after 3 sleepless nights. Down below, the staff moved like clockwork. Valets, bellmen, housekeepers, each performing small, perfect tasks that made the Belmont feel effortless. Thomas arrived with breakfast and the morning paper on a silver tray. "Good morning, Mr. Vale," he said. "Fresh coffee. The Morrison party checked out at 11 sharp. All charges paid in full. No additional complaints." "Good," I said. "Thank you, Thomas." He nodded. "Your brother asked the front desk for your room number. We declined, per your standing privacy instruction." I smiled faintly. "You did right." He hesitated, then said, "If I may, sir, what you did last night was the most inspiring thing I've witnessed in 2 decades of hospitality. The team is proud." "Thank you," I said softly. "Just enforcing standards, same as always." When he left, I sat down with the coffee and the silence. The air smelled of roasted beans and new beginnings. My phone blinked with more unread messages. Family, reporters, colleagues who'd caught whispers of the ballroom revelation. I ignored them all for a while. Instead, I looked out at the gardens. I remembered the day they'd been overgrown and broken, vines choking the fountains, pathways cracked from neglect. I'd seen potential where others saw ruin. That had always been my gift, to recognize what could be restored if someone was willing to do the invisible work. Maybe families were like that too. At noon, I checked out, though technically the suite was mine to keep. I preferred to leave like a guest, to prove that even ownership doesn't excuse procedure. Thomas escorted me to the front doors. Staff lined the corridor without being told to. They didn't cheer, didn't clap. They simply nodded, small gestures of respect that meant more than any applause could. Outside, my car waited under the portico. I shook Thomas's hand one last time. "Prepare the weekly report," I said. "Occupancy rates, revenue analysis, guest satisfaction metrics. Send by Thursday." "Understood, sir." Driving away, the Belmont receded in the rearview mirror until it was only light between trees. I realized I didn't feel victorious. I felt balanced. The story had finally evened out. Back in Charleston by dusk, I climbed the stairs to my office in the old textile mill. The brick walls caught the last amber of the day, and the air carried the faint smell of coffee from the cafe below. My desk was as I'd left it: organized chaos, deal folders, architectural renderings, letters from potential investors. My empire wasn't glamour. It was grit layered carefully into something graceful. As I booted up my laptop, my phone buzzed. Derek. For a moment, I considered letting it ring out. Then I answered. "Hey," he said. His voice was rough, stripped of performance. "I wanted to, actually, ask about your work." "Ask," I said. "I mean, really ask," he continued. "Not compare, not assume, just understand what you've built." I leaned back in my chair, watching light crawl across the frame photographs on the wall. Each hotel, each milestone, each building reborn. "All right," I said. "Where do you want me to start?" "Start at the beginning," he said. "Not the money, the why." So I told him. About the first night I stayed up fixing a broken water heater myself because no one else could. About the family who'd thanked me for a clean room and a warm smile when I'd been running on no sleep. About how systems fail when leadership hides, and how excellence means consistency when no one's watching. He listened, really listened. No interruptions, no laughter, just the sound of realization stretching between us. After an hour, he said quietly, "I wish I'd known this side of you sooner." "You weren't looking for it," I said, but there was no bitterness left, only truth. He exhaled. "You're right, I wasn't. I was too busy chasing applause." "And I was too busy avoiding it," I said. We both laughed, softly, tiredly. But it was laughter that didn't hurt. When the call ended, I sat in the stillness of my office and felt something I hadn't expected. Peace. The kind that doesn't need to be loud to be real. For years, I'd built hotels that made strangers feel seen. I'd perfected the art of making people comfortable in spaces they didn't own. Maybe now it was time to learn how to do that for myself, to belong, quietly, without apology. I turned off the phone, leaned back, and let the hum of the city drift through the open window. Somewhere in that hum was the sound of everything I'd fought for. Not wealth, not recognition, but self-respect. People spend lifetimes chasing validation. I'd finally understood the secret. When you build something from the ground up, when you pour yourself into it until it stands tall on its own, you don't need anyone else to clap. You just stand there steady, knowing it will hold. That was the real luxury. Not the marble floors, not the chandelier light, not the champagne at $40 a pour. Just the quiet, steady fact that I had done it. And I had done it my way,